Once again, with great pleasure, let me once again welcome Mr. Praveer Sinha, CEO of Tata Power, to our studio. Thank you for being the guest editor. Thank you for your time. I know it's a busy morning for you, yet you've taken time just to come to our studio. It really means a lot to us.
Thank you, Nikunj. Always a pleasure to come to ET now, and look forward to having a very fruitful interaction with you.
How does it feel to set the agenda for a news channel for the entire day?
Well, it's very challenging for
Welcome to our world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, you can set the agenda, but trust me, we'll struggle to find the basics of power also. It's a very complicated sector for us to understand.
Okay. I agree with you that it's a very complex and a very demanding sector where you need to do every time right. Okay.
I'm just going to bring our viewers up to speed with the transformation of Tata Power from when you took over versus where the company stands now, 2019 to 2024. It was a backbencher stock. Market cap had plummeted. Debt to equity ratio was high. There were problems in terms of managing the power demand versus supply equation. But things now for Tata Power has turned. So let's look at the graph of Tata Power, the stock graph from 2019 onwards. I'm using 19 as a benchmark, not 18 as a benchmark, because 18 was an extraordinary time for the entire sector per se. So 2019 to 2024, Tata Power has been nothing short of what could be called as the real darling of the stock market. The stock has given returns of 400%. Debt to equity ratio has come down from almost 3 to 1.1. They've invested 45,000 crore in capex, and they're committed now to really change as a company in terms of what it was versus what it is versus where it will be. It's a proud feeling, right, when you see the stock go up 4x.
Thank you. It's great to see a 100-year-old company performing well and being contemporary for the future. So I think it's a matter of great satisfaction and pride, and I feel blessed to be part of Tata Power.
Why is this 100-year-old company now behaving like a startup? It is changing, it is transforming, it is adding new businesses.
I agree, but Tata Power has always been a very innovative company. 100 years back, the thought of generating clean power, the thought of bringing clean power to Mumbai, the transmission system, I think that it was itself very innovative at that time, very disruptive at that time. And I think Tata Power always believed in doing things first. And most of the things that have happened in the power sector, the first mover advantage has been with Tata Power. So I think there has been thought leadership and there has been action leadership of Tata Power right through. And we will continue to do that.
Dr. Sinha, that's Tata Power of back then. What's happening in Tata Power right now? Because, much like autos, this is one sector which is going through very, very serious disruption and a lot of changes perhaps on a minute-by-minute basis.
Absolutely right. I think energy transition is a big thing, and energy transition is a big thing because it is the need of the hour, the climate change, sustainability. All this requires that we move away from the earlier way we used to produce power to the new way that we can produce power. And the first thing that we need to do is how do we move towards clean energy? But having said that, we need to find good solutions because clean energy cannot be intermittent clean energy. Most of the time we have seen clean energy is for the solar is for a few hours or the wind is for a few hours. It's not there right through the year. So how do we make it more reliable? And for that, I think the transition has to be that we need to get to storage, whether it is the chemical storage or electrochemical or mechanical storage in terms of pumped hydro. So I think there is a necessity to make it 24/7, and some of the research globally that is happening, some of the work that is happening globally, which we are trying to implement over here, we are very confident that by end of this decade we'll have very, very attractive solution, and this will become a reality that we will have 24/7 clean energy solutions with whether it is pumped hydro or battery storage or some of the other alternatives that we are looking, including the SMRs, these small modular nuclear reactors. So I think you will see huge transition in the coming years.
You know, I have spent large part of my young days with power load shedding. Summertime, no
It still
electricity.
happens in Delhi.
No, Tata Power is
Yeah.
saying there is no power cut now.
Okay.
There's no power cut in Delhi now.
There's no power cut in Delhi, and I always used to say that people in Delhi would have candlelight dinners.
Yes, we've
because
had
of
many.
power cut.
Nikunj and I are from Delhi. We've had many candlelight
Yeah.
dinners.
Large part of my my young days were all about power cuts in Delhi. Some part of Aisha's young life was perhaps part of load shedding or power cuts.
Awan was the lucky one.
Awan
always
was in Mumbai.
Bombay.
No
Yeah,
power
so
cut.
no power cuts.
Okay, so we'll put this graphic out, sir, and we may just request your reaction to this. We are building up the power scenario here. The power demand in India historically pre-COVID was growing even lower than the GDP, 5%. Now it is growing higher than the GDP, which is a 9%. Large part of the power capacity in India is still thermal in nature, which is about 85% is broadly thermal in nature. I mean, plus minus 1 or 2%. And then if one really looks at what the pace of reform here is, things are essentially changing in that entire space of solar rooftop. So let's first talk about power demand. 9% power demand. Is that real? Is that here to stay?
I think it is here to stay. And when you talked about the power supply, we used to have load shedding. We used to have earlier a lot of load shedding, whether it was in urban areas or rural areas. And I remember many years back going to few places in the country, and they used to say that, yes, we also have 24/7 power, but we get 24 hours in 7 days, not in 1 day. So things have changed. I think in last 10 years, the Saubhagya scheme of the government, where the government has reached out to every villages, and virtually I would say that most of the villages, if not 100, at least 97, 98% of our villages have supply of power. At least the residential supply of power is there. And that has led to increase. Secondly, the middle class, which used to have very few air conditioners or electrical gadgets, that has increased a lot. So the consumption in various houses, whether it is in urban areas or semi-urban areas, which used to be something like, I would say, people would have 1 or 2 ACs. Now everyone has. Similarly, the number of electrical gadgets have gone up tremendously. And of course, the number of people who have come into the middle class is very, very high. The third thing is that the industrial capacity utilization has gone up. We have seen a lot of industrial action. We have seen a lot of commercial activity, especially post-COVID. What we are seeing is that the consumption in commercial and industrial has gone up very much. Since the quality of power has improved and the availability has improved, many of the industries who used to at one time go for DG sets, and mind you, we had nearly 90,000 megawatt of installed DG set. People have moved away from that. So people are now saying that I have much reliable utility power and why I should use DG sets, which are more expensive power. Similarly, they were using a lot of captive power plants. Those are going out. So I think this 9% growth is there to stay. And I definitely hope that it will be. In fact, last year it was double digit. This year is in about 8.5 to 9%. And I won't be surprised if we have double digit growth.
So double digit electricity growth you see for next couple of years. My next question is that if I look at the total installed capacity of India right now, it is broadly 500 gigawatt, less than 500 gigawatt, 470 to be precise. India in the past has doubled its capacity or power capacity in every 8 to 10 years. Do you see that India will be 1000 gigawatt this time by 2030? If yes, what will be your capacity? And another follow-up question, how much of that would be non-carbon? I'm bunching 3 questions into one.
So I think if you see the trend in the country, 2000 we were about 100 odd gigawatt, 2010 we became 220 gigawatt, and now we are about 470 gigawatt. So there is huge capacity addition that has happened every 10 years. We have actually doubled, and I won't be surprised with the type of projects which are getting implemented in the country that we will become 1000 gigawatt country by 2030 or maybe around that period. So I do expect that it will happen. Secondly, I also expect that most of it will come through the renewable sources. And we have seen in last 7 years, the compounded annual growth of renewable power has been nearly 17%. And if we have to reach the 500 gigawatt of non-carbon by 2030, we need to grow at 25%. So I think we are in good shape, and this is definitely going to happen. Having said that, Tata Power is also growing capacity. Today, we are nearly 15 gigawatt of capacity, out of which nearly 55% of it is non-carbon. All our new capacity additions are happening in the non-carbon space. We are in renewable. We are at 4.3 gigawatt. We already have 5.2 gigawatt, which is under implementation. And hopefully in next 24 months, all these will get implemented. So we'll, in any case, become a 9.5 gigawatt by 27. And add to that our existing coal-based and all that. So you can see that our plan is that by 2030, we would be at the end of the decade, we will be about 30 to 35 gigawatt. And most of it, of course, will be in the clean energy space. Very little, because at the end of the day, energy security is a very important aspect. And while we are transitioning for clean energy, it cannot be that we do not have our existing coal-based plants or some capacity additions to meet the immediate requirements, because we can't have a scenario whereby there's no energy available. So to meet the energy security, we will do that. But mostly it will be clean energy solutions.
Okay. My next, let me also introduce and welcome, Abhaji. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Sinha, of course, you know each other. That's Avan, Aisha. And he's the guest editor today.
Okay.
I have one more follow-up question, and this is purely about Tata Power. 2018, I could have split Tata Power into 3 or 4 business verticals: distribution, transmission, global business, new initiatives. But 2024, the new businesses are picking up. Energy transmission has started. Distribution is stable, and global business, in terms of the advantage you're getting from coal mine, that also has kicked in. 2030, as the sector migrates, as you add new capacity, what could be the picture of Tata Power? How much will come from core? How much will come from non-core? When will the benefits of this 45,000 crore which you've invested will start kicking in?
Well, we invested 45,000 crores in last 4 years, and we have plans to invest nearly 20,000 crores every year. So in next 7 years, it will be much higher investment that will happen. But most of the investment will happen in the clean energy space, where it's not only renewable but also pumped hydro, where we have plans to add nearly 2.8 gigawatt. We also have large investments in transmission and distribution. We are already setting up 4 new transmission systems. We will get more aggressive in the transmission. We are looking for more opportunities in distribution. We've done very well in Odisha, and Delhi and Mumbai, of course, has been there. We expect that post-elections, there would be a big announcement in terms of PPPs in distribution or multiple suppliers in distribution. So we are definitely looking for investment in all these. So our businesses, the growth business will be in terms of clean energy solutions, but clean energy giving 24/7 power, not standalone solar or wind or just some of the hydro plants.
जब बारिश होगी तब पावर कैसे आएगा?
बारिश होगी तो तब हमारे wind plants चलेंगे, and then our pumped hydro will run, and our hydro will run. And बारिश होती है तो demand भी कम हो जाता है. So you are able to today do much better management of power by ensuring that your supply is based on the demand or on the load, and not just creating an infrastructure which is not utilized during certain periods.
I had the pleasure of going to their generation station in Bombay, and you just realize that about 7% to 8% of the total power of Mumbai is just produced from that station there. And I think the turbine which we were shooting on actually accounts for nearly 5% of the total power generation of Mumbai.
Wow.
Absolutely right. So
Okay. Yeah.
That has been a workhorse supporting the Mumbai city.
Wow. Kudos to that. Okay, let me officially welcome for our viewers who are just tuning in, Abha Shukla. She's the Additional Chief Secretary, Energy, the Government of Maharashtra. Abhaji, welcome to the ET Now studios.
Thank you.
You know, from our understanding of what Mr. Sinha has been telling us is that this is one sector, there's massive disruption, massive transition which is taking place, and there are sort of, you know, two aspects which are currently at play. One, of course, is the search for the fuel or energy resource of the future, and B, currently it seems that storage is the immediate issue at hand. Now you represent a state, like we were discussing jokingly, which has always had 24/7 power. What is your reading of the sector right now? The challenges, the pros, the cons?
So, as all of us know that all over India, our energy needs are growing exponentially.
Absolutely.
So, the same thing is happening here in Maharashtra, because Maharashtra is one of the most progressive states. Our industry is growing, and we have declared that we are going to become 1 trillion economy. So, in view of that, our energy demand is growing at a higher rate. So, earlier it was like around 4.5% or 5% compounded annual growth rate. But now we are expecting that growth rate will be much higher. It will be in the range of 6.5 CAGR. So, in view of that, now we are planning for energy transition, and we are trying to see that our energy mix also improves, because as of now, whatever energy needs are there in Maharashtra, 87% of the energy demand is met through conventional sources, and 13% is coming from RE. As all of us know, that Honorable Prime Minister of India declared that by 2030, 50% of energy demands are to be met through renewable sources. So, in view of that, we are trying to promote all these new innovative areas. So, we want to bring it to 50% from 13%. So, of course, we are looking at different new areas such as pumped storage facilities, which we are trying to create. Solar is another area which we are focusing on. In fact, to be precise, I would say that as of now, our solar generation capacity is around 3,600 megawatt, which we have developed in the past, say, 18-19 years. But recently we have launched our new scheme, where we are targeting at solarization of agriculture sector. Completely we are going to solarize the agriculture demand. So, we are expecting that in another 2 years' time, our solar energy generation will be increasing to around 12.5 gigawatt from 3.6 gigawatt. So, this is how we are going to cater to our needs in the
You want to apply
future.
for the tender?
Yeah,
You already saw the roofs.
Yes, and I must compliment Abhaji for taking the initiative. Last 2 years she has been at it to see that how do we solarize the pump set, because
What is solarizing the pump set? Can you break it for our viewers?
Yeah, so it's about creating the solar system in rural areas, so that it caters to the requirement locally. So rather than transferring power from long distances, you have solar power which not only meets the requirement of the pump set but also of the local. So for a discom, this is a win-win, because it meets the requirement of the consumers locally, as well as it unnecessarily, the subsidy which was being earlier given, that reduces drastically, and to that extent they are benefiting from such an arrangement. So it's a very, very attractive, but I think you should ask Abhaji. She is the real driver of this new concept, which is now being copied in other states.
You are the
also.
guest editor. You should ask the question.
So Abhaji, I'm sure this is a very, very innovative, and I do know that many of the states are now trying to copy this. Can you elaborate that what is the win-win for everyone in such a solution?
Okay. So, briefly I would like to tell you about this scheme, which is of distributed renewable energy generation. So, there are two types of scheme basically. There are bigger solar power projects, and This concept has come from our PM Kusum Yojana, which was started a few years back, and not many projects were coming under this scheme till now. So what we did, we tried to find out the gaps. So the basic concept is that as of now our energy demand for agriculture sector is almost 16 gigawatt, and half of it is met during the night time. So because of the system constraints and our energy needs, we realize that we are unable to supply this power during the daytime, and in view of that we have decided that we will generate solar energy near the demand center. So basically substation wise we conducted a survey. We calculated the demand substation wise and we identified the fallow land which is with the government. We thought that we will provide the land to solar power developers, and these are small projects of say 2 megawatt to 10 megawatt, which will come in the vicinity of the demand center. So all the, because agriculture sector is the one sector which was the, I would say, pain point. We were unable to recover the dues in agriculture sector. The recovery was very low, and the discom is also bleeding because of agriculture sector. So basically we knew that in order to bring down the annual average cost of procurement, we have to now focus on solar energy, because as of now our average cost of supply is around 7.5 rupees, whereas the solar will be generated at 3 rupees 10 paisa.
Yeah, 3.5. Yeah.
So there is a gap of almost more than 3 rupees, and the cross subsidy burden which was going on the industry sector was because of the agriculture sector, because our average cost of supply is 7 rupees 50 paisa, whereas we are supplying the energy to agriculture sector at 4 rupees 10 paisa. So remaining part we are providing a subsidy from the government, and even out of this 4 rupees 10 paisa the recovery is very low. So in a view, if we are able to generate this 9,000 megawatt at the demand center of agriculture sector, I am sure that our gap between ARR and average cost of supply will reduce, and it is going to benefit the discom.
Okay.
Yeah, and speaking of that, because we have seen an improved health of the discoms, be it the cost and revenue gap coming down, what's the future for them as we're seeing the overall health improve, receivables as well getting better?
So now in fact what we have done, that we have tried to segregate agriculture sector from discom. We realize that agriculture sector is the sector because of which a huge burden is coming on industries. So in fact we have gone for out of box thinking. We have created this solar agri company, which is basically segregation between agriculture sector and discom. So ultimately we are planning that all the agriculture load will be catered by this solar agri company in future, and it is certainly going to benefit the financials of discom, because discom is basically in losses due to agriculture sector as of now.
Okay, so I'm
And
just
this, sorry, and this company is going to be government held, or is there going to be some amount of private participation?
No,
as
it
well
is.
here?
It is absolutely. It is a perfect example of PPP, because the solar power plants which are being developed, as mentioned by Mr. Sinha, all the private players are participating, whereas we are providing our equity in form of land, and other benefits are also being extended to the solar power developers.
Okay, so I'm just going to summarize the initial part of our discussion, and Abhaji, Mr. Sinha, please correct me if I'm summarizing it incorrectly. First, the sector has seen transformational changes in last 3 to 5 years. The sector always had some issue or the other. whether it was a discom level, whether it was at a debt level, at company level, or private sector which overexpanded in the last decade, all that cleansing process is behind us now. Power sector now could be called as a high growth sector. The growth there could be 9% approximately for next couple of years, and the large part of the capacity addition for the power sector will come from non-carbon. That's what Tata Power is aiming, that's what the state of Maharashtra is doing, and that is what everybody is excited about. I have one simple question. The cost of power generation in India is coming down. There was a time when cost of power generation by solar was about 15 rupees per unit. Now it's down to 3 rupees 10 paisa.
Yeah.
For Tata Power, if you're expanding in a sector where the prices they come down, then how will you manage your cost? Because when you're setting up a capacity, you're assuming that a PPA has been signed at a particular price, but chip prices, solar prices, silicon prices, they come down exponentially. It's like floppy disk, right? You're paying X percentage, X rupee for a percentage of storage. Now that storage has just gone up. Isn't that a real problem?
So it's actually a benefit to everyone, because when your cost of generation comes down, then your cost at which you can supply also reduces drastically. So you don't have to charge unnecessarily, because fortunately in renewable power there is no cost for wind speeds or wind, or there is no
Raw
cost
material
for
free hai, sun.
yeah, so it's free of cost. While when you use coal or gas, there is a cost which is dependent on the market condition, and it keeps on going up every year. So your recurring cost comes down very much, and that is why you are able to supply at a much lower. So basically the cost of power is the summation of the fixed cost, which is whatever you have, capex you have incurred, the variable cost, which is the raw material that is used. And since in renewable the raw material cost is zero, you are virtually only taking care of your fixed cost, and this becomes virtually flat for 20-25 years. So I think eventually you will see that the prices of power will come down, and as Abhaji mentioned, the challenge was in the rural area because they were being cross subsidized, and that is why the industrial and commercial tariff were higher. Now if you are able to do distributed generation and cater to the rural requirement, then you will be giving a cost reflective tariff to the industrial and commercial users, and your average cost of power will come down. So it's a win-win for everyone, and I think for us, once we transition and we find smart solutions on this, you will find that over a period of time the cost of power will come down, and there will be more certainty on the cost of power, and not the yo-yo that we see most of the time when the coal price or oil price or gas price goes up.
I'm just getting in Pradip Kumar of IREDA, but I just have a small follow-up question for you, Mr. Sinha, and something which is of really Aam Janta interest. The general view is that energy demand will go higher. Every time historically energy demand has gone higher, underlying energy prices have gone higher. And if I look at the evidence of merchant power prices have gone higher in last couple of quarters. But what we understand from Abhaji and what we understand from you, and that's a very powerful statement, that in India demand will grow at 8 to 9%, capacity will grow, but you don't expect energy prices to go higher.
What we expect, the benefit of all these, what Abhaji mentioned, is a new thing that they have implementing. It will take 2 years to 3 years to get implemented, and the full benefit of that get translated. So maybe in next 3-4 years we will start seeing the trend. Right now we have a challenge because the demand is growing up, and to meet that demand you are getting imported coal, you are getting a lot of gas which is at high prices, or oil, and that's why today the average cost of power is higher. But I think come 2027, come 2030, you will see a drastic reduction in
I like this.
Yeah,
love this part.
absolutely. That's the
Energy prices
headline
and,
for us today.
Okay, Pradip Kumar joins us now. Mr. Kumar, good morning. Thank you for joining us. You know, every time I look at IREDA stock and everyone is like, oh my God, is it real? Is it real? It went public less than 40 rupees and then it went to as high as 170 or actually 200 rupees. So are you pinching yourself? ये क्या हो गया stock में?
Very good morning, and good morning to all. So first of all, as a responsible Government of India organization and who is spearheading the renewable energy development in the country through financing, which is the most crucial aspect not only renewable, new and emerging sector. So when we come out with the IPO, the market was quite uncertain about us. So also other stakeholders. So finally, whatever the pricing was decided at the Apex committee level, with that price we started at 32, but the issue opened 50 plus. And it went up to continuously 219 and 215, 219, and it came down and it was stable for some time at 170, 180. And then again, this mid cap, small cap segment, a lot of things were happening. So, and moreover, as a responsible entity, our job is to stick to our fundamentals and exhibit the good governance. And we are continuously doing that. If you see in September result on the basis of which we did the IPO, and our December result has already shown quite a lot of improvement in that, which during the roadshow we had shared with that kind of feeling with the prospective investors. And since I was told that there is not much seller available, anyway, that is the market and the stakeholder to decide. As a responsible entity, we'll continue to give our performance and best quality corporate governance standard, which we are doing.
Let's also welcome on board Karthik Ganesan, Fellow and Director Research Coordination, CEEW. Thanks so much for taking time out. We're talking about this multi-decadal Atmanirbhar Bharat story. How are you looking at this massive transition that we've been discussing quite extensively from traditional energy business to green energy for India?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up an important point of Atmanirbhar Bharat. We were just discussing this yesterday at work. While all of the development of solar is a fantastic, a solution for the country in terms of moving away from the reliance on a fuel that has other environmental consequences, coal basically, we must remember that at the end of the day, coal is something that's we're domestically endowed with. The moment it comes out of the ground, coal today contributes something like 1,70,000 crore, right, to the economy just by virtue of its value, right, and then after that there's value addition on it. But as we look at solar today, right, solar PV specifically, we're looking at a domestic value addition on the back of the installation in FY22 of a value addition of close to 7,000 crore. So there is almost like a 20-fold difference between what solar PV contributes by virtue of value add to the economy versus what coal does. So one of the big, while there is a lot of exuberance around the potential for solar, and I think some of the initiatives in Maharashtra and indeed many other states are heartening. Ultimately, it'll come down to whether Government of India and private sector stakeholders are able to realize this domestic value add in solar as well at a scale at which coal is giving them value addition, right? Coal is giving value addition primarily because they're endowed with it. Whereas for solar, there has to be an ecosystem that has to be put in place that helps us manufacture solar in a big way within the economy. The PLI scheme, of course, that has been launched in the last 2 years is a start in that direction. It is expected that we will have a significant share of our production of, right from polysilicon to the module within the country. But that remains to be seen, right? How many of those investors ultimately, put the money down, put the capacity down, and whether we remain competitive with the constantly changing landscape. You talked about the continuously decreasing prices that we have been seeing. If India is to realize that we have to be on top of the investment game, not be stuck with technology that's perhaps a little outdated, and that is what is happening because China's at the bleeding edge. The machines that we basically get in to manufacture solar PV modules, right, or rather the crystalline and the wafers, are of a slightly earlier vintage right now. So how do we keep on top of that? That is the big challenge. And if we crack that, and if there's active investment from the private sector with incentivization from Government of India, I think we can realize this massive potential that we're looking at here. And of course, at the end of the day, the numbers we're talking about here, right, the tens of gigawatts, pale in comparison to the hundreds of gigawatts of solar PV and wind that we'll be requiring in the the few decades ahead. So I hope that kind of speaks to that.
Mr. Sinha?
Yeah. So, Mr. Das, I have one question for you. Recently, the Prime Minister program of 1 crore households, which will be given solar power, is IREDA going to finance that? And will that be at a very, very subsidized rate of interest? Because if this has to become attractive and this has to get implemented, financing cost will be very, very critical for the balance amount over and above the subsidy that the government is giving.
See, first of all, I'll thank you for asking this question. And time and again, I've been asked this question. And whenever anything financing of renewable is concerned, so everybody looks at IREDA. See, out of our total 500 gigawatt planned, rooftop was planned for 40 gigawatt. We have already achieved 10. So remaining 30 to be achieved. So this 1 crore residential rooftop solarization may add around 30-35 gigawatt too. See, as financing is concerned, perhaps our ministry is engaged REC as the nodal agency who we are coordinating because of their pan-India network presence as well as close coordination with the distribution companies. And I was told that they have worked with the banks and DFS. Bank were asked to have a very thin margin of 50 bips and to lend around 7, below 7. So certainly a company like IREDA, that will not be doable. The reason is we borrow from the market and we lend. We don't have any kind of subsidy or anything with respect to any kind of lending in this space. And as a matter of fact, this subsidy part around up to 1 kilowatt, some 30,000, 2 kilowatt, 60,000, and 3 kilowatt and above 78,000. That kind of subsidy will be given. So what that subsidy will be capital subsidy, and then remaining part for which the lending is to be done. And lending at 7% for IREDA will not be feasible at all because we raised from the bond market recently at around 7.5, a little over that. So that is not as of now doable. But as far as supporting to that space with REC or any bank or any other agency, because of our expertise, we are there to partner with them.
I'd like to draw everyone's attention to a headline, and it's an unfortunate headline about pollution levels in India. And Delhi right up there. In fact, there is a city in Bihar which is now been called out as one of the most polluted cities in the world. I'm just forgetting the name. There was a time when everything which was happening in the world was centered around ESG. Then came the Ukraine war, a sudden realization that if everything is centered around ESG, that will lead to a spike in inflation. So everybody moved away from ESG. Where do you see this ESG versus non-ESG debate settling for the power sector?
I think the country has taken a very bold step of saying that we will have 500 gigawatt of non-carbon by 2030. I think this was a very, very bold statement made by the Honorable Prime Minister in the Glasgow COP27. And I think that having said that if we have 500 gigawatt of non-carbon, 50% of our energy will come from non-carbon. Right now,
50% of your energy
will come from non-carbon.
That is the Prime Minister's vision.
Yes. Okay. And we are definitely moving. And we need to also understand that we are in transition. This is not something which is a knee-jerk reaction and can happen tomorrow or day after. But in next 5 to 7 years, you will see many of the steps that are being taken, including the 1 crore household. And that means 30 gigawatt of capacity will get added, and this will come up both in urban areas as well as in rural areas. So you can imagine the consumption which otherwise would have come from 30 gigawatt from the brown power will actually be moving to green power. Similarly, the scheme that Abhaji mentioned about Maharashtra. So you can imagine 9 gigawatt of capacity will move from the conventional generation to clean energy and meet the rural requirements. So I think the type of initiatives and the type of capacity addition that is happening, India will be able to a very large extent cater to clean energy solution. But this will take time. This is not going to happen immediately. It will also require certain amount of sacrifices in terms of people going for energy conservation and not wasting energy. And I think this has to work in tandem, whereby we all work towards a solution where you optimize usage of energy and see to it that we slowly transition towards clean energy. And whatever results and reports we have seen, there has been a lot of simulation of capacity requirement in 2030 and 2040. We see that there will be a huge amount of traction towards this space, and we will possibly move towards net zero much before the 2070 timeline that the Honorable Prime Minister has said.
But Dr. Sinha, what's the bigger challenge right now? And Abhaji, if you could also contribute to this. I mean, is it the quest of finding the energy source of the future, or is it more the storage solutions which are problematic right now?
So, energy has three components.
Sure.
The reliability, and I mentioned to you that storage will be, and the storage solutions can be battery storage, pump storage, it can be any other storage that you can do, any thermal storage. The second is about the resilience. How do we have resilience? And that's where the small modular reactors, nuclear reactors will happen. Incidentally, India is number 2 globally in terms of the new nuclear plants which are being set up. There are at present 8 nuclear plants which are being set up in the country, and we do expect that private sector will be allowed to come into the nuclear area in a certain restricted way going forward. So that will be one big area. India unfortunately does not have gas, but we will have to find some solution to meet the peaking requirement using gas. And the third is the energy security, and that also is equally important, both in terms of availability of energy plus sourcing of it. So that's why the Atmanirbhar Bharat of creating infrastructure to manufacture many of these things within the country is also playing a very important role. And I think directionally we are very much there. It's a question of some more time to implement it on ground. We'll have to give time to everyone to do it, but I can tell you that the narrative everywhere today in the country and outside the country about India is that we are one of the fastest in terms of going towards clean energy.
Abhaji, would you like to add to that?
I would like to add one thing. In fact, your question was very pertinent. But as we are transitioning to green energy, all of us know that most of it is coming from solar. So this is inform energy, and it comes during the daytime. So in view of that, energy storage is equally important. In fact, in Maharashtra, in a very innovative way, we are trying to handle this, because there are many more such areas which are emerging now. For example, green hydrogen sector is also emerging, and in green hydrogen production, solar energy is a big part. So in view of that, I would say that energy security is important, and in view of that, to source energy is our first quest. And similarly, in order to meet the peak demand, because peak demand is the most critical demand, we also have to look at the storage capacity and increase in storage capacity.
I think I have just last question, a time for last question with Karthik. And Karthik, before we summarize, let's get some closing comments from you. In this entire journey of energy transition, who do you think would be the outsized winner? It is not that this transition attempts have not been made in the past. Solar, nuclear, wind, hydrogen, these sources of energy have existed and they've coexisted in the past also. But this time indeed it is looking different, that the non-carbon sources will be able to have a higher impact. So in your understanding of which clean source of energy do you think will be disproportionately benefiting in this entire energy transition chain?
Right. I mean, obviously, it feels like from the discussion, and Ms. Abha also pointed this out towards the end in her comment that, we're disproportionately relying on solar. And that's also not necessarily a good thing, right? At the end of the day, diversity in the generation mix is something that's very essential. Historically, for instance, we've always strived to have that diversity in the mix because there could always be interruptions in the supply chain or in the resource base of any one particular technology. So standing here right now, it feels like solar is that one technology that's going to sort of get all the chips because it's being talked about, but there has to be more R&D in multiple other sectors. Mr. Sinha spoke about the role for nuclear. I mean, whether that is small modular, whether that's even conventional of a type that's, for instance, been pursued in the European areas where you have significantly large reactors, could certainly be a solution for India. Now the thing is, we need to ensure that we get the population more involved in the decision making around what is the technology that will serve us well. I don't think, uh, assuming that solar at the end of the day will deliver all the energy we want is appropriate, because there are, of course, challenges associated with, for instance, land availability. In fact, just today, I think we heard that the Supreme Court has decided to consider, right, this total ban on installation of solar panels in the habitat of the Great Indian Bustard. That's obviously coming because there is this tension between other use cases and solar energy. Now, we have to, of course, then consider at the scale at which we need renewable energy. And I don't think we should be thinking of 2030 alone. That's the timeline, of course, for this discussion. But the country and the people need energy over decades and decades. In that period, the area of land required to basically drive through solar and wind in their current technological form and efficiency is close to 4.5 to 6% of the country's land area. That will pose a lot of challenges. So just considering that, I think trying to diversify what is it that we invest in, and in the event that we don't have that technology we want to have in the mix in the 2070 timeline, investing in the R&D today so that by 2050 we're able to install these new technologies. Right? It might be a different form of solar PV, one that does not require as much land, and we're already seeing technologies like perovskite. So I would say for now we certainly focus on solar. It will certainly be the winner because I think wind brings with it a lot of engineering challenges, which I think the industry is wary of, and I think also the seasonal variability, which necessitates more storage, which is not currently available. Solar, I think, is certainly that winning pick for this decade. But I hope that we don't end up discussing only solar 20 years from now.
Finally, as the largest pure play green financier, what is the long-term road ahead for the company? And like Dr. Sinha was also talking about, big bang announcements post-election expected on the distribution front. What is it that you're anticipating?
See, if you look at our loan book, which we have doubled, more than double in last 3 years, and there was a time where our loan portfolio used to be more than 35 to 40% in solar. We were all talking about growth of solar and all, like 28 times we have grown in solar. But if you see now our book of December audited figures, it has come down to 30%. And if you see the new and emerging space, we are having around 37% of our share. So I'm coming back to Dr. Sinha's question that whether IREDA is going to fund this rooftop solar or not. We are doing rooftop solar, but certainly not residential rooftop solar. I'll make the two classifications here. One, there is a hardcore retail when we talk about residential, and IREDA is a pure play green finance company, but project financing level, we have hardly 175 employees, but we are the largest green finance company. And not only that, when you talk about retail, we have a number of banks with us. We have government banks with us. So what is required in this rooftop solarization is that they are network and easy to access individual households. So that those scheduled banks can do, even though MNRE has engaged as nodal agency. So they have not engaged them just to finance. They have to handle for entire implementation. So financing is open to all, like all banks and others. So that's what I was trying to make it clear that banks were asked to support with a very thin margin so that around 7 they can do it to make it easily bankable. And already more than 1 crore registration has been done. I saw the report in MNRE's site. Now coming back to new and emerging, because when we talk about solar, every sector has its limitation. First of all, when we talk about solar, we require a huge amount of land for that. And we all know in economics, land is the most scarce asset with us. So we should be very careful while using the land. And when we talk about using the land for solar project or wind project, we have 25 years. So land should be barren, and it will be guaranteed to be barren for next 25 years. Then only we have to select that kind of land. So we need to look into the kind of growth what we are having. Like I always say, for every single GDP percentage growth, we require at least 1.25 to 1.5 times of GDP growth in energy growth. So therefore, huge amount of energy growth will be requirement will be there. And in the time to come, when we are planned to, or rather determined to become a developed economy in 2047, huge amount of energy requirement will be there. So we need to look into new sources and emerging sources like this CBG and ethanol. though their size may not be big, but we being an agriculture-based economy, we have fair amount of opportunity there. And we have grown. Our loan book has also grown quite big in last
Right, sir.
1.5 year. And in the time to come, this pump storage, green hydrogen and its derivatives, as well as offshore wind. These
Right.
are the immediate area where we are going to.
Right, Mr. Das. All right, Mr. Das, really appreciate your time. So I'm just going to summarize our today's lovely interaction. First, and please interpret if I'm wrong, the power sector will see a growth of 9 to 10% for next foreseeable future. B, the pricing power has come back with power producers. Discoms are in a fine health now. The capex in the power sector has just about started, and alternate or non-carbon energy is going to be the buzzword, whether it's a combination of wind or solar, whether it is nuclear or whether it is only solar. But the great energy transition in a sense will be at play, and this sector will see growth at multiple levels: distribution, transmission, even pump storage. And we are actually what could be called as the real breakthrough moment for the power sector. Last 10 years was more like a lost decade, but next 10 years would be a meaningful decade for the power sector.
Absolutely right. And I think one big change that will happen is in the distribution sector. While there has been a lot of effort which has been made in the generation and transmission, distribution sector has not seen the type of change.
Distribution looks at
And I think you will see a lot of disruption in the distribution sector, because the new technology, the usage of data, the usage of smart metering and smart grid solutions will play a very, very important role, because you will have on real-time data as well as electrons flowing, and you can manage your grid in a much smarter and a better way. So I think that will be the last of the big reforms that we will see in the power sector in the coming few years.
All right. I think we can sum that up. Thank you so very much, Dr. Sinha. What a pleasure it's been having you with us in our studios. Abhaji, thank you so much for taking time out and joining in. Mr. Das as well as Karthik, thanks for being with us on this extensive discussion. We would have loved to extend it, but unfortunately, we're out of time. We'll take a very short break.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.